parent recently asked about a child who is really struggling with reading and writing, who is just shutting down in the face of difficult academic tasks, and who is dreading the first day of school, which apparently is just coming up for them. So what I'd like to do is share this message first, and then unpack what might really be going on. So this parent writes, "My son has very poor working memory. He struggles with reading and writing. Visually, he is very strong. If we were in Socratic times, he would be a genius." I just might interject here. He probably is a genius because there's a genius inside every child. But his disabilities are affecting his overall self-confidence. Our first day of school is on Monday, and he is dreading it. On a positive note, he has a very nice group of boys that are his friends. But now, in middle school, these boys are not in class with him because their performance and their grades surpass my son's. That is a hard pill for him to swallow every day. So now he's moved into shutdown mode. When he's overwhelmed or the academics are too much for him, he shuts down. Sometimes he cries. Sometimes he even bangs his head. It is heartbreaking. It is heartbreaking. And whenever we have children who struggle with learning, we want to understand it. We want to know what's going on. So there are several things that this parent is talking about. One, she or he, I'm not even sure whether it's a mom or a dad, talks about working memory. And working memory is our ability to hold information in our mind while we think about it. It'll impact reading, it'll impact math, it will impact writing. So let's talk about that just for a moment. So when we're reading, we're taking in pieces of information. We're going through the text, we're holding those pieces of information in our mind so that we can compare it to what we already know, which is how we understand anything. And that is happening in working memory. When we are trying to formulate a thought and keep that thought in mind while we are trying to get that information and the words correctly spelled down on paper, that is happening in working memory. So it's very possible that working memory is at the core of some of the struggles that this child is having. She then talks about this child being impacted in terms of their self-confidence. And in fact, this is very, very common. Think about yourself when you were in school. If there were days that you were struggling, if maybe there were days in a row that you weren't getting something, we can only do something that is that difficult and that painful for so long before we just have to react to it. Some kids react by acting up, and some kids react by shutting down. In this case, of course, we know that this child is shutting down and not even trying. So when we hear kids, well, he's not even giving it an effort, he's not even trying, that the teacher says that to you, if they don't have the self-confidence and if they have been beaten up by day after day of struggling with particular academic skills or content, it's not surprising that they would shut down. It's not being lazy. It's not having grit. It's simply not knowing how to approach the task. It's not having the skills to do that, and knowing that and believing that it's going to be unsuccessful because they just don't have the skills to do that. Of course, there's an answer to that, but it's not simply speak up or just try, because without the underlying skills, like working memory, for example, if that's what's going on. I love hearing that this child has very nice boys who are friends. Friends and the social connections that are made in school and elsewhere are just so important for kids as they're growing up. But how heartbreaking it's got to be for this child who has had the same boys in his class, has really established these bonds and trust and friendship with them. And now all of a sudden they are in a different class because their grades are higher. They're in a different class because, and some schools do this, some schools don't do that. They group students by performance level or what they interpret as capability. And so now he's feeling punished, actually, probably by this process that has put his friends in one group, and he is isolated and he's left out. So indeed, that would be a very hard pill to swallow every day, to go in and wish that you could be with your friends. When he's overwhelmed or the academics are too much, he shuts down. And again, shutting down is something we do when we just don't believe that we can tackle something successfully. So we give up, and it's just easier to do that than suffer the painful experience of trying to take on something that is just beyond our capacity at that time. So really what we're hearing about here is an issue with potentially a cognitive skill, working memory, that is having this massive impact on self-esteem, on friends, on their social environment. It's affecting virtually everything in this child's life. It seems like it might be connected to school, but it is affecting everything. School is sort of the common denominator in this whole situation, but nonetheless, it's probably affecting him in other ways in his family as well. So when we talk about kids who are struggling with reading and writing and potentially other academic tasks, difficult or challenging academic tasks, working memory is one possible cognitive skill that could be at the root of what's going on with this child. In fact, when children struggle with learning, there is almost always an underlying cognitive weakness that is at the root of the issue. Cognitive skills are the skills that we use to learn. They're things like attention and working memory and flexible thinking and our memory skills and our reasoning skills, our thinking skills. They're the basic ways that our brain takes in information and manages it and puts it into the right kind of form and rehearses it and connects it so that we can learn. So when there's an issue with an underlying cognitive skill, like working memory, that can affect everything, affect a lot of different, across the curriculum. It's not just a reading issue, it's not just a writing issue, it's not just a math issue. It's probably going to affect all of those things. Now, it may be working memory in this case, but it could be a lot of other things, and we don't really know what that is. For example, it could be a memory skill. One of the things that has happened since the pandemic is that students' memory capacity, their ability to actually take in, store, retrieve, retain, and recall information, especially verbal information, has declined. So it could be that he has difficulty or just remembering information. And therefore reading and writing are challenging. It could be that it could be some of his reasoning skills. In fact, it could be a combination of things. It could be a combination of processing speed and memory, working memory and flexible thinking. So it's hard to know. What's really going to be important for this family, as for many others, is to take a look underneath and to do a cognitive assessment that will allow us and them to determine what's really going on, what those strengths are and what those weaknesses are. Because the other thing that sort of gets lost in all of this is that, and there's absolutely signs of it, if visually he's very strong. If this were the time of Socrates, he would be very, very successful. So he clearly has some strengths that are not being recognized and not being used, and that he's not able to leverage in the context of what is going on in school, where other students are able to have cognitive strengths that maybe lend themselves much more directly to the way that reading and writing and all the rest of the curriculum are taught in school. So there are lots of ways to use strong visual processing, and we might look at whether his reasoning skills are more around visual processing. If that's the case, so for example, let's say that this is a child who understands images, charts, graphs, diagrams, some way to present the information visually rather than auditorily or rather than in words. That might be the way for him to really access some of what he's doing. It may be that in combination with reading, taking the written text or the written document that he's supposed to be reading and working with, and turning that into a mind map or an idea map or an idea web. There are lots of different terms for that. But that makes the connections among the ideas visible. And it's a great technique for, especially for students who have stronger visual processing. It could be that his memory, visual memory is the real strength. And then we would give him similar kinds of tools so that he could remember the visual information and not be so dependent on the written, verbal, language-based information. So what's always going to be part of the digging into what's going on underneath are finding the cognitive skills that are at the root of the struggles, but also finding the cognitive skills that are strengths and that a child can really use to be more successful. One of the things that people don't always realize is that cognitive skills can be built up. Working memory, visual processing, what else we talked about? Attention, processing speed. All of these skills can be strengthened, especially when we work on strengthening so that they work well together, not just sort of in silos by themselves, but so that we can utilize that information and connect all those different processes in our brains. So it absolutely can happen. If this child started working today, and if school is starting on Monday, it's not going to probably have an impact quite that quickly, and it won't happen by Monday, but within a period of 3 months, it could be a major impact. We could be seeing a huge difference in how this child is able to remember information, hold it in his mind while he's thinking about it, having that translate into better reading and writing skills, being able to use his learning strengths, his visual strengths to be able to help him, being able to connect with his friends more frequently, having more self-confidence, because when you have confidence that you can tackle a situation, you don't need to shut down. It's worth trying it. And you can try and you're going to achieve things you never imagined you could probably do. So if anything that we've talked about today sounds like your child, you owe it to them and yourself to find out more. I hope you will sign up for a parent training webinar that we offer that digs deeply into all of the topics we've been talking about, the science of learning, the role of cognitive skills, and how parents can play a really essential role in helping their children who struggle become capable, confident learners. So either message me directly or check the comments for a link to register for the webinar. And I also would love, if you have questions, please share them in the comments. Let's start a dialogue. If this does sound like your child, you know what the struggles are, and we'd love to be able to help if we can.